The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We are ranking shortstops. We're almost done with our player rankings, by the way. We're also covering the latest Major League Baseball news. And what do you do at the end of the draft? What are some targets you can look for right there in the last couple rounds? That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show.
Play ball.
Welcome in to an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show, presented by Belly Up Fantasy Sports, Righteous Felon Jerky, and Seat Geek. We are inching ever so closely to Major League Baseball regular season, and more importantly, fantasy baseball draft season. And we are here to get you ready for that here tonight. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I am joined, as I am just about every single Sunday night, by the senior fantasy writer at BellyUpFantasySports.com. He is the one and only Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing, man?
We're doing great, and we're in March now, and so it's officially springtime, even if it's not official, but it's March. Baseball.
It's officially springtime, even if it's not official. Yeah,
that's right. And so we've got baseball. We'll have real baseball this month. And as you mentioned, we're kicking it into high gear. We got the draft coming up in a couple of weeks, and then the season. So it's time to get excited about baseball. There's no question in my mind about that.
Yep, I went to my first live game yesterday. Actually, a doubleheader at Eastern Kentucky University. So went and hung out. They won. They split it. 1-1, lost 1. Watched a kid. I'm gonna have him on the show tomorrow night. But watched a kid through 6.2 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. He was dealing, and so that was fun. Got to see some home runs and some nice plays as well. So it's got me ready to go. I'm excited for the next game I can get to, and I probably will not get to any this week, but hopefully after that things will start to level out a little bit as far as my schedule and the baseball schedule goes. But we're not here to talk EKU baseball. We're here to talk fantasy baseball and all that's going on in the world of Major League Baseball. So let's get things kicked off, Kev. Let's start with our Fantasy Burner segment. Fantasy Burner segment is presented by SeatGeek. SeatGeek.com is where you can go to find the tickets to these ball games that you're looking to go to. And if you use code BellyUpSports at checkout, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase there at SeatGeek.com. So here's what we're looking at today, Kev. We're looking at end of the draft targets. The way I put it in our text was Mr. Irrelevant. Guys, we're looking at there at the very end of the draft. And because as much as you can wait and wing it at the end, I think it's good to have a strategy all the way through the draft. And so we get towards the end of the draft. What are you looking for in the final rounds?
Well, you're definitely looking for upside.
Yeah.
And you're looking for it's essentially dart throws, really. But you want to be throwing darts at players that will be starters for their teams, and perhaps players that maybe they were great at one time in the past, but maybe had some injuries last year, but are looking good in the spring. Maybe some young players that might be busting out. And I have one of those that I think you'll find interesting. But they're players that can help your team. But if they don't help your team, then you could just cast them aside and go out and get yourself the next player that you like or whatever. But to me, you definitely want to get some guys that have upside, but players that you figure are going to be regulars. You don't want to get some guy who maybe 80, 90, 100 games. You want somebody that's going to be in their lineup that will provide you with positive stats.
So I halfway agree with you. I agree with you on throwing darts. I think this is the spot you take a risk. I think this is where you go out and draft. I've got 3 different ways to go about it here at the end of the draft. Number 1 is the homer pick. If you don't have enough guys on your team from the team that you cheer for, You can take a homer pick with your final pick. You can go get a guy. I'm a Brewers fan, so if Sal Frelick's still sitting there last round, you know what? There's a good chance I'll probably take him. So I think it's a good place for a homer. Now, if you've already done homer picks throughout the draft, then you don't want to do a homer pick with your last one. But if you look at the end of the draft and you don't have anybody from your favorite team, go out and get you one. It's always fun to have somebody. We've got a new member in our league that's a Rockies fan. You know what? If they get to the end of the draft and they don't have any Rockies on their team,
Right.
take a swing at somebody. I'm not drafting a Rocky, so
No.
they could probably get them earlier in the draft. But that being said, that's the time to go get them right there at the end. The other thing that I like is injured pitchers in specific, guys like Walker Buehler who aren't starting the season. If he's sitting there at the end of the draft, I don't mind taking him here, throwing him on my IL spot, and hoping I can hang on to him long enough for him to come back and play. Guys like DeGrom and Scherzer, they're probably going to be out a little too long to do that stashing. But you know what? You can try it. Start with them and see what happens. If you don't need that injured list spot, then they can hang out there for a while. And then the other one is something that you mentioned is the young guys. Taking a big swing at a rookie. I like here to use this on a guy that's not on the active roster, but is expected to be called up within the month. So I look at guys like Pittsburgh's Paul Skeens, who comes in, the number 1 overall pitcher. I think that's an interesting one. They're saying that they think he's going to come up and play. And so, but the question is when? And if it's going to be, August, well, then it's not worth drafting. Toronto's got a pitcher named Ricky Tiedemann that is supposed to be coming up as well. He's the top prospect in their system and should be up sooner rather than later. So that's a kid I'd be willing to take a shot on. And then Cleveland has a first baseman, Kyle Manzardo, another prospect, one of the top prospects in their system. We'll see what goes on at first base there with Naylor. Maybe Naylor goes DHing some. Maybe Manzardo DHs some. Kid's got all kinds of power. They expect him to come up. So that final pick in my draft, I'm looking at some of these prospects that'll make an early call up in the season. Maybe they're not on the roster just yet, but think back to Adley Rutschman. I wanted him on my team, and I was willing to wait till he got called up, and it was well worth the wait. So that's kind of the mindset that I've got here. When it comes to that final pick, do you have players on your mind for these targets here at the end?
I do, and we need to kind of qualify this as what kind of draft are you involved in? Because we've got 26 openings on our roster, just like in baseball, and that's probably a little more than most teams have. But if it isn't, then you want to be looking down around that area. And if you're looking for guys that go off the board in the 20th round, it does not help your case at all. But you want to be targeting guys that's right around ADP 260 or lower. Yeah. And so I do have some players that I think the first one that I have you'll find very interesting.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because he's at 259, and that's Jackson Torino of your Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
And that's just 1 point less than 260, but he's right there. And if you're in our draft, maybe this is not something that you want to look at too much because you may not know, because we do our draft 2 weeks before the season starts.
Right.
And we know if he's going to be the opening day second or outfielder. But even if you don't know that, he's a guy that you could target, because if he's on the roster, he's going to be putting together some, excellent, hopefully, stats for you. But
yes.
So
you're in a league with 2 Brewers fans. I don't think he is going to be there in the final round. I would be shocked. Now he'll be there late. He should be there late at the very least. Who knows? Chase maybe takes him way earlier than he should. But this kid he's the number 2 prospect right now, right behind Holiday in Baltimore.
Right.
He has produced everywhere he's been, and MLB Network predicted yesterday, I believe it was, that he is on the opening day roster. Now, they don't know that for sure. It's just a prediction. But the way they've been running things in spring training, I would be shocked if Jackson Chourio is not on the opening day roster. And if he's not, he'll be there very soon. He's a draftable player this year, I think.
Absolutely. So he may, as you mentioned, because Chase don't, you will.
Right.
But another guy that I was looking at is somebody I talked about last week. He's at 277. That's Eugenio Suarez, third baseman for Arizona. He's going to be a starter. And
that would be a
he's got
solid
power.
last pick. Yeah.
That would be a very solid last pick, especially if you've got first and third like we do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm battling a little cold here, guys.
He's all
so
choked up about it.
So Eugenio Suarez, I like that. 162 games. You put him in your lineup, you don't have to worry about him. And the last hitter I have is Christopher Morel of the Chicago Cubs.
Interesting.
He's a second baseman, outfield guy. And he's the guy who hit 26 home runs last year.
Yep.
So, and he's at 263. So he's right there in that mix for a hitter that should be able to help your team and be on the roster most of the season. And so he's a guy that you could target, and he has that kind of versatility that I like. So he's the guy that I'm looking at there. And so a couple of pitchers, I have Nestor Cortez of the New York Yankees.
Interesting.
At 262.
Yeah.
And he was only won 5 games, but he had some injury problems. But the year before that, he was 12-4 with a 2.44 ERA. So he's a guy that you can look at. And there's a guy that I know your dad likes, and that's Brian Bello of the Boston Red Sox. And he's at 272, but he won 12 games last year. So how he's at 272, I'm not too sure. 12-game winners, are not a dime a dozen like they used to be in the big league. So he's a guy I would look at, even though we don't care about Boston too whole much. But in the last round, you throw all that out the window and you just go and get yourself a player that you think can help you. And if he comes close to that 12-win season as a last round draft pick, that'll be huge.
Yeah, I think bad teams, second or third pitcher, when you're at that point in the draft, I think of teams like Washington, Pittsburgh, those kinds of teams, typically Miami. There are teams where guys just really kind of want to stay away from these teams, generally speaking. And sometimes some pitchers get overlooked as a result of that. Boston be the same way. Where if you get a guy there at the end, if you get a guy, to me, I don't like having a pitcher who's not top 3 in the rotation. I want them to be top 3 in the rotation if I'm going to be drafting them. Now, I'll waiver wire a guy who's got a good matchup, whatever. But if I want them on my roster long term, I'm looking for a top 3 in the rotation. And there are guys there. There are guys that you can get that will be there. Like I said, Miami pitchers, they're sneaky. Okay, they're sneaky good pitchers down there in Miami. And honestly, the ballpark is pitcher friendly also. So that's
right.
Nice.
Well, pitcher friendly parks in all of baseball.
Definitely. And so that's pitching is definitely an intriguing spot there. Relief pitchers, if you don't like to draft relief pitchers, you're going to take one there. Those kinds of things as well. But you have to be aware. Obviously, it depends on how the draft goes and what your roster looks like.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. We understand that, but generally speaking, I think this is good advice as you end near the end of your draft to be able to look at and say, okay, which way do I want to go? Do I want to go another pitcher? Do I want to go a guy that's injured and stash him? Do I want to go for a swing on one of these up and comers that maybe will not be there on opening day? Although there's a lot of up and comers who will be there opening day, it sure looks like at least. And guys that can fall. I was surprised, and we'll talk about this when we get to our rankings. I was surprised that some guys who were hurt last year, how low they're going this year, when before they were actually really good. So I'm intrigued by some of this, and we'll talk about that when we get into our rankings here in a little bit as well. But there you go. End of the draft. What are you going to do? Have a plan. Don't just go into it willy-nilly and go get somebody that can help your team out, whether it's right away or down the road. And here's the reason why, by the way, I'm willing to take a swing on these prospects or injured players is because my guys aren't more than likely going to get injured right off the bat. A month in, they might start getting injured, but I don't usually have to have that IL spot or the extra roster spots at the beginning of the season. It's as the season progresses. So I'm okay with stashing a guy, whether it's on the IL or just on my roster. I'm willing to do that for the right guy. But you got to do some research on the prospects. You got to know when are they anticipated to come up. Because, like I said, if it's July and August, I don't know that it's worth stashing at that point.
No, that's too late because you could be burying the standings by then.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, go out and get people that can help your team out sooner rather than later. All right, that's the Fantasy Burner. It's presented by SeatGeek. Again, you go to SeatGeek.com for any ticket needs that you have. And if you type in that code BellyUpSports, you're going to get $20 off your purchase and enjoy the game at the help of SeatGeek and Belly Up Sports as well. All right, time for segment number 2, the call to the pin. Our call to the pin is presented by Righteous
That's always got to
Felon.
give you a jazz up right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Go to righteousfelon.com. Right when you get there, you can join the flavor revolution, trying flavors like the bootleg and barbecue, the Soul Survivor, the Foul Capone, or the Bourbon Franklin. There's all kinds of flavors for you to try. You can do it at righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15. That's STOVE15. You get 15% off your purchase. And this is a product that I have purchased several times. I absolutely love this stuff, and I think that you will as well. All right, let's get into some Major League Baseball news. And really the news of the week was the signing of Matt Chapman. Another Boris agent. Bellinger signed last week. We talked about that. Chapman, he got way less than he was originally going for. He goes to San Francisco, which makes a ton of sense because San Francisco needs help and they've got some money. So he goes to San Francisco and jumps in there. When they signed Soler, you said, I love it. Good signing. How do you feel about Chapman going to the Giants?
Well, I'm not nearly as big on the sign because we talked about him. He's on my because we didn't know where he was going to sign or anything, but now that we do know, he's still on my. I don't want him on my team. If I'm a professional team, I could see why they'd want that. His glove is about as good as it gets down there at third base. But when it comes to fantasy, glove doesn't help. Might keep you in the lineup. But I was looking, and last year he hit 240. And do you know what his career batting average is?
If
It's
I had to
240.
guess, I'd go 236.
Pretty close. It's 240. So what he put together last year is basically what he does. That's his career. And he's had some great years at the end when he was in Oakland. When he went to Toronto in that lineup, I thought he was going to go over there and just play some bash ball. It has not been the case. His bat has a lot of holes in it. And so I think the Giants need a better hitter than what he'll provide. And so I'm not nearly as high on this signing. I get it that they need help. So, and it's basically the same deal that Bellinger got as far as because he can opt out after each of the next 2 years. But going to the Giants, sours me on him right there because I'd rather the San Francisco Giants just slide off into the sea. But I'm not excited about this at all.
So basically, their other option was J.D. Davis, who's on the roster right now. J.D. Davis, looking right now, he hit 248, 18 home runs, 69 RBIs, 1 stolen base, K rate of 27.8. I think Chapman's an upgrade. Is he a superstar? No.
No, not anymore.
No.
Not if he ever was.
But I think he's an upgrade. And I think the Giants are the kind of team that need to go out and sign these guys who feel slighted, have a chip on their shoulder, and maybe they come in and have some success in San Francisco, at least help them compete still in the division. Because I just don't think, I don't know. I don't know if Chapman, I think that the addition of Chapman and Soler make the Giants better. I think if it was just Chapman, it would be, okay, whatever. I think adding both of them, though, is a help, is a positive for the Giants. I like it. I actually think it's a good move for San Francisco.
The thing that gives me pause and all that, because both of them are right-hand hitters, and that's not the part, that provides a lot of, oomph to right-hand hitters. If you're a left-hand hitter, you could hit it out into, the bay and all that sort of thing. But so, if the Giants, if that's because they offered a deal to JD Martinez as well, and he said no to that,
Yeah.
and he's still out there. So they're definitely looking to better their team, and good on them on that. And if they want to continue to do that, want to just bring in Jordan Montgomery while they're at it,
There
and
you go.
boost their pitching staff, because he's the next one that's going to come off the board for a 3-year deal. You just watch.
Yeah. So right now their rotations: Logan Webb, Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, Keaton Wynn, and Mason Black. Wynn and Black
No
are both
one's
injured.
falling over themselves about
Yeah,
that.
both injured. So that's not good. Cobb and
No.
Ray also not available. I'm sorry, Tristan Beck is the one that got injured, not Mason Black. But either way, so you got
Yeah,
two.
Logan Webb is just about as good as you can get, but after that, it's a nosedive.
So you got Snell and you got Montgomery. One of them is an option, I think, for
Right.
San Francisco. It
And
makes
and
sense for
and
them to go out and get them.
and
The
both that
question is
makes
which
sense
one do
for
you go
both
for?
of them, because they're both, pitchers obviously, but San Francisco is a pitcher's park. So maybe you sign with them and build up your stats for a year.
Yes. I mean, I look at this team. I love their bullpen, Kevin. They've got Camilo Duvall at the closer. They've
Right.
got the Rogers
Yeah,
twins
that's top
as your
notch there.
7th and 8th inning guys. And they're decent everywhere else. They got a kid named Ethan Small who most people don't care about, but he was in the Brewers system. I know him. I've seen him in the minors. He was very good. He was a guy that had a lot of potential. They go out and get him from Milwaukee this year as well. They've got a really, really solid bullpen. The problem is I mean, you can give me Webb, Harrison, and Hicks as rotation guys, but I want Harrison and Hicks as my 4 and 5, not my 2 and 3.
Right. That's a huge problem, and they know that.
Yeah.
So, they get paid a lot more money than we get, and they know that. But and so if they don't sign somebody else, their rotation is going to let them down. There's no question in my mind about that.
Yeah, and outside of those two guys, Snell and Montgomery, I don't know that there's
Yeah,
another pitcher out there right now
not this late.
that makes sense to go out and get. I'm trying to think through. I don't know. I don't have the free agents right in front of me, and I don't know that I can find them either. So, anyways, I'm sure
Right.
there's pitchers out there, but none to that degree at the very
No,
least.
if they were any good, they'd be in camp.
Right.
Unless
That or
they're
they have
bored
Scott
out,
Boras as their agent.
Right. And so that when the big story is Matt Chapman, that's not mind breaking, shattering news. But I'm sure you saw that Shohei Ohtani made his debut
Yeah,
on Tuesday, and all he did was hit a home run in that game.
that's all.
That's all he did. And then on Wednesday, Yamamoto made his debut, and all he did was pitch 18 pitches, 16 of them strikes, 2 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 3 strikeouts, no walk. So it's way too early to get excited, but you gotta like what you see out of the two of them to start the preseason.
Yeah. Yeah. And and it's interesting. I've been watching and reading some different things. You got guys like Ellie De La Cruz, who's had a decent start. He's been hitting well. You've got some prospects that are hitting well. Also, I don't put much into it yet. Like Yamamoto looked good. Good for him.
Right.
That's fine. It doesn't boost my confidence level just yet.
Right.
I
2
I want to see
innings
more.
cannot, seal the deal.
Right. I want to see a whole lot more before I get too excited about what's going on in spring training. I'm happy that it's here, and I'm happy that guys are doing fine. But we need to see a whole lot more. And we've only got a couple weeks before the draft. We draft on the 17th. So let's show me something
Right.
quick before I start drafting. So, yeah, there's not
That's
a whole
right.
lot of other news going on right now. Anything else you want to talk about MLB wise?
No, not really. So,
Okay.
we're still waiting for Montgomery to come in.
Yep.
I think the Rangers are still in the running for that because of the 3-year, break it off after 1 year. I'm
Yep.
sure that's going to happen next.
Very,
And
very well
so
good.
they're a team that needs the rotation help, even though they're the defending world champions, because they've got so many injuries already on their staff. So I
Well,
think
let's
that's
talk
a
about
deal that
that.
might get done.
The
But
Rangers, they're in this survive mode until they get their
that's right.
pitchers back. They've got the
Right.
pitchers there. They just got to get them on the field. And it's going to take a
Right.
while. So, how
Right.
much do you really spend to try to keep you in the hunt through the summer? Last year, I really thought their pitching staff would kill them, and they survived a long time last year.
They did.
So, how much do they actually need to go in right now versus maybe trusting the process a little bit with some of these lesser known guys?
Well, because they brought in Jordan Montgomery at the trade deadline last year. That was huge, especially when it came to the postseason. He was the guy who really stepped up big. And so if, like I said, they don't want to take the franchise and send it into the stratosphere on the taxes, but if they can get him, I think they should do that because their starting rotation is shallow, and they've had, like, last year they had 6, 7, 8 guys they could use, and one of the ones that you're not big on that you've talked about, and so if they don't sign Jordan Montgomery, he's going to be probably the number 2 starter.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
So I'm looking at their prospects. They got a kid named Cole Wynn, who
Yes.
hasn't made it out of AAA just yet.
Nope.
Jack
Nope.
Leiter, a Vandy kid,
Right.
who they drafted back in 21. He's at the AAA level right now. Danny Duffy pitched in the majors. He's in the AAA level right now. They've got guys that have been there down here as well. They got a guy that played for Chicago, Jose Urena. They got some experience at the very least at the minor league level, but their rotation currently is Evaldi, John Gray, Andrew Haney, who I think all three of those are serviceable rotation guys. Dane Dooning, who is he hasn't been what people thought he would be. Let's put it that way. Cody Bradford possibly in the rotation right now as well.
And they
You got a
want him
couple
to
of
be the
guys.
long reliever, so that is not ideal. They
Well, and
want
he's
him to be the
26.
long guy in the pen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's 26, so at some point, starter could be the role that he moves to. Of course, I would assume that Yuri Rodriguez is a similar situation as well. But yeah, it's not the. I think they could survive though. I don't think they have to go out. I mean, I think adding Montgomery or Snell would be phenomenal for any team. I don't know that the Rangers have to do that. You've got three pitchers that are injured: DeGrom, Scherzer, and Tyler Mahle, who they brought in as a free agent, and he had Tommy John surgery back in May last year. So you've got some guys there, and if you can survive till they start coming back, you can save a little bit of money and still at the same time be in the running. Although I think Houston runs away with the division this year, but that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day.
Right.
But yeah, we'll keep an eye on what's going on and these free agent signings, and we'll cover them here, of course, every Sunday. The Call to the Pen presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Again, go to righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15 at checkout. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. It's now time, though, for our final segment of the night. We call our Fantasy Focus. The Fantasy Focus is presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, your one-stop shop for all things fantasy sports. Articles for every fantasy sport you can imagine. And, of course, all of our one and only Kevin Wilson's articles can be found at BellyUpFantasySports.com. Today, for our Fantasy Focus, we are ranking shortstops. And next week, we do outfielders, and we're done with the rankings, and we're on to drafting.
That's right. Then we get real serious.
We'll get to that next week. But today is shortstops. We were talking before we came on the show, Kevin. not as strong as a position as both of us kind of thought it was going to be once we got into the rankings.
No, I was surprised because shortstop was a strong position last year.
Yeah.
And there's some players that we're going to talk about, of course, that are up at the top of these rankings that are very strong. But after that, and it drops off. And I was really surprised about the variation, if you will, between the rankings that Fantasy Pros has and ESPN. They're wildly different. Wildly. So this really comes into the point where you have whatever it is that you're following. Well, if you're drafting on ESPN, you're going to have the where they're ranked or whatever. But if you're drafting somewhere else, you better find out where they're ranking people, because if you're using Fantasy Pros, it's not the same at all. As ESPN. Somebody's using ESPN, and you'd be like, wait a second, that guy was supposed to be number 740 or whatever. But so that just a point of caution there, because I was really surprised, and we're going to be talking about this because I'm going to mention this, and you'll see what I'm talking about, the difference in between what these two platforms rank these guys.
All right, well, let's get started. Tier number 1 for shortstops. Who do you got sitting there?
Okay, so unlike the last couple of weeks where I've had one guy at the top, that's not the case this week. I've got 3 guys at the top.
Okay.
And let me just say right out of the gate that the one guy is contingent upon him being healthy.
Okay.
And of course, I'm talking about Corey Seager.
Yep.
I've got him at number 2
Okay.
overall. Bobby Witt, I think, is a clear number 1 at shortstop. And so he's young. He'll do whatever you need to do. 30 homers, 96 RBIs, 49 stolen bases. The only problem is he was thrown out 15 times. That's way too many.
That's way too many.
Way too. But if that's your biggest complaint, you're okay.
Yeah.
And so he's at number 1. Corey Seager's at number 2, and he was the number 2 guy in the AL MVP race, even though he missed time.
Yeah.
And so maybe if we're drafting a couple weeks and you don't know if he's healthy, you got to slide him down at that point, to me.
Yeah.
But contingent upon him being healthy, he's number 2. And then I've got Trey Turner, also in this tier, who's coming off for him a down year.
You can say that again.
And you drafted him, And since you drafted him, I'm going to let you talk about him more than I'm going.
All right. So I'll have to talk about him when I get to tier 2, Kevin, because in tier number 1, I put exactly 0 players in tier number 1. And the reason why I chose to do that is I will not draft a shortstop in the first round. No. And I would be hard pressed probably to draft one in the second round. Although I wouldn't just scold someone who takes a Witt or a Seager in the second round. But to me, those guys, I don't have them valued that high. And I feel like there's so many more. When we get to outfield, I mean, there's just so many more guys available that I would want over those guys. Now, I do have Seager 1 and Witt 2, although I think Witt is I'd rather have Witt on my team, but because I don't know, I have a little more confidence he's going to be there the whole time. But Seager, he just put us up the better stats. So I keep Seager at 1. So in my tier 2, I have those 3 guys: Seager, Witt, and Turner. Turner is a strikeout machine, or was last year. And I don't know. I'm on this. I catch myself saying every time we do rankings, there's no way they can be as bad as they were last year. Surely there's no way Trey Turner can be as bad as he was last year.
No.
Surely not. That being said, I've actually got him 4th on my list because I put Francisco Lindor in this tier 2 also. Okay. And I've got him as 3rd. So I go Seager, Witt, Lindor, and Turner, and they're all in my tier 2.
Okay, and this, that's a good point, because this brings up right what I'm talking about. If you're on Fantasy Pros, they've got Bobby Witt as the number 2 player overall.
Oh, my soul.
In fantasy baseball. That's insane. Okay. So if you're taking him as the number 2 overall pick in your draft, you're setting yourself up for failure.
I'd say so.
So I don't know how they came up with that. They've got him at number 22 on ESPN. That's a little more reasonable. I might be willing to give a second round draft pick on him. Not saying that I would, but I might be willing to do that. But I'm certainly not going to do that in the top 5 positions of my draft.
Yeah.
Not doing that at all. And so, and also in Trey Turner, they've got him. Fantasy Pros has him at number 12 overall, which means he's going at the top of the second round, bottom of the first. That's way too high for me.
Oh yeah.
They've got him at number 34 on ESPN. That may be even a little high to me based on what he did a year ago. But
I would
you
say,
could talk me into that. You could.
yeah.
But
I think
number 12
34 is
overall,
reasonable.
not happening.
Yeah. I think 34 is reasonable because, again, I think there's upside with Turner. He's not old.
Oh, yeah.
And he's on a good team and, all
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff. But, man, I don't know. He's that kind of player that if you had him last year, you're going, I ain't taking him. He's that Mike Trout kind of player. Not as lowly ranked as Trout, but as the guy that everybody just kind of goes, yeah, I'm kind of done with that.
Yeah, don't be done with him just yet.
Yeah.
Don't be floating him down the river. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
well, the
he
Phillies
still hit
fans
27 home runs
yeah.
at the shortstop position. So
Lock
yeah,
him
don't
in
float
the
him down
Nate.
the river just yet.
Lock him in the
And
Nate
so-
Nguyen's team. Let's hang on a sec. Nate's drafting 7th overall. So here you go. Prediction. I don't know if Nate's watching. If Nate's watching, then this doesn't count. But if Nate's not watching, second round, Nate Nguyen taking Trey Turner. I'm calling it right now.
Okay.
All right.
So there you have it.
He's a Phillies fan.
So-
That's why I say that.
Okay. And so then in my tier 2, I've got 2 guys. Gunnar Henderson's one of them.
Okay.
We've talked about him before. We both are big on him. Big. And then I got Francisco Lindor here. And another guy that's wildly, he's 21st on Fantasy Pros, 65th on ESPN. So
Oh.
I'd much rather put a 5th round or draft pick or even a 4th round towards Francisco Lindor than give a second round.
Yeah.
Or
So
maybe top of
yes.
the 3rd.
Second round is rich for me, but I will say this. People got sour on Lindor 2 years ago.
Yeah, don't do that.
And he did decent last year. His stats
He
were
did.
decent,
He did.
and he's due. I mean,
He did.
another guy who's not old, right? And so you want to be careful with these kind of guys.
Right.
You don't want to overdraft them, but at the same time, you don't want to give your opponents a Francisco Lindor in the 4th round, a late 4th round, something like that. I
31
think,
homers, 98 RBIs, 160 games played.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
he's
I
not
like
done by a
Lindor.
long shot.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to tier 3. We're not talking about. Well, you can talk about Henderson. He's in my tier 3. But talking about Gunnar Henderson a little bit because I love Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah, shortstop, third base. He's a top player, and so if I'm in the 3rd or 4th round and he's sitting there, I could pull the trigger on that because he's second base, like I said, 3rd. Not second base, shortstop, 3rd.
Yeah,
and he played 150 games. Some of them were rocky, you know that.
Yeah.
And but towards the end, he was putting it together big time. And
I'm a believer. Yeah,
I'm a believer in Gunnar Henderson a lot. And he's been battling some injuries in the spring, but if he's fully healthy, which I expect, he's fully draftable. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I've got him as my 5th shortstop. I had him as my 6th third baseman. He has that eligibility, which is really, really nice and can fill either spot. If you go out and draft yourself Austin Riley or Jose Ramirez or an Alec Bregman, you can come back with Gunnar Henderson and not have 2 third basemen. You can have third baseman and a shortstop,
He's a shortstop,
which is awesome. And I'm big on him, and I might be higher on him than I should be, honestly.
I don't think you are.
Okay, well that makes me feel a little better. I
don't think
I've got him as the top of my tier 3, fifth shortstop overall, and I've got him right there with Bo Bichette and Nico Horner in my tier 3.
Okay, I can agree with that because in my tier 3, I've got Bo Bichette, and I've got Nico Horner, and then I got Han Sung Kim.
Okay,
Of the Padres.
interesting.
In this
Okay.
tier. And he's everywhere, and so you got to factor that in when you're doing these rankings. So I put him in my tier. He's going to be the shortstop, but he's got second, short, and third. He's been there on all 3 tiers that we've done. And so, Bo Bichette is a guy that I like, who was kind of heralded, a little bit early on in his career that really didn't show until last year because he hit 306.
Hmm.
So if you got a shortstop and you hit 306, you want to pay attention to that. But once again, Fantasy Pros has him at 34, and then ESPN has him at 89. Much better value there.
Definitely. Now I'm intrigued by this. First of all, Bo Bichette. I'd rather have Bichette or Henderson than probably my tier 2 guys. I just feel safer with those guys for whatever reason. Horner, I'm not drafting Horner, but again, I'm going to rank him as I think he deserves to be ranked. If Lightning's going to strike a guy, it just makes sense for it to be Nico Horner. And again, it's not his fault. It's all Craig Counsell's fault. The baseball gods are going to rain down wrath on the Chicago Cubs this year because of Craig Counsell's just backstabbing. But you put Hassan Kim in there, and I've got it in my tier 5. I'm surprised. I've got Bogarts over Kim. I've got him over him in the second base tiers, and I've got him over him in the shortstop tiers because he's still eligible for shortstop. And
Right.
so why are you higher on Kim than you are on Bogarts?
The reason why I'm higher on him is one simple reason: his versatility.
Yeah.
And so that has to factor in. It has always factored in with me.
Yeah.
And so I have him higher at second base as well because I think as a second baseman, he gives you that more oomph
Okay.
over there at second. So that rises him in the rankings. But Kim Hunter, it's not like he had 17 homers, so 152 games played, and so but that versatility is something that's very difficult to overlook. So that's why I have him here in this tier.
Okay. Yeah, I've got him a little lower, so I'll get to him in a moment.
Okay.
My tier 4, I come in with Xander Bogaerts and Matt McLain from Cincinnati. McLain, I had him. I'm high on him this year. He's got multiple eligibility as well. He was what was he, third base also, I guess. Now I can't find him on my other tiers. He's got eligibility more than just shortstop. But anyways, I've got McLain and Bogarts here at number 4, tier 4. Again, McLain has that positional eligibility. He's got second base and shortstop eligibility. He might be. Is he outfield too? Do you know? He might be outfield
Matt
too.
McLean is not.
Okay.
He's
And
second base shortstop.
okay. So I like him. I think, again, I've shared my thoughts on the Reds, but I think they have some real fantasy value this year. And again, I've got Bogarts here in 4, where I've got Hassan Kim in 5, in tier 5. I don't know. I go back to this. They can't be as bad as they were last year. Surely Bogarts is going to be better at some point. Things are going to click, and I just think Bogarts is due for a bounce back year.
And we certainly agree on that. And so you talk about Cincinnati Reds. Well, my tier is overflowing with Cincinnati Reds because
Okay.
I've got Ellie De La Cruz here in this tier, most reluctantly enough, but he showed that he can play. So I got him here, and you might be surprised at this, but I got Dansby Swanson here in this
Okay.
tier, and I know I'm bucking up against the curse right here, but
Yeah.
and then I've got Matt McLain also in this tier,
Okay.
and I like him a lot, but he only played 89 games, so I think he needs to show a little bit more before I move him up in these tiers. But Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McLain probably deserve to be above Swanson because they've got multi-position eligibility. They're younger. They're going to be in a good lineup. But Dansby Swanson, he's plays every game. 160, 162 games the last 2 years.
And he
So
averages how
he's going to
many
be in your
strikeouts
lineup.
per game?
Well, let me see here. He had 154 strikeouts, which comes out to a 24.1 strikeout rate,
Yeah.
which
Um,
for a shortstop is a little is high, no question.
yeah.
But he also walked at a 10% clip, so you got to
Yeah,
factor that in. And hit 22 homers.
he did.
And he plays in Chicago, except for the curse, with the wind blowing out and all that. The potential to hit home runs is there.
I'm gonna save my Dansby Swanson hate for a little later in the program.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Ellie De La Cruz, same thing as Swanson. He strikes out a bunch.
He
That's
does. He
really
goes really crazy.
the only negative to Ellie De La Cruz is that.
Let me see. Ellie De La Cruz was at 33.7% strikeout rate.
Yeah.
So, but he
But
was a young guy. So
exactly, he's a year older, has some experience now, maybe, and he's raking right now in spring training. But I've got him in my tier 5. I think that he is intriguing. I think that he is electric. I think for a baseball team, he sells tickets. He just strikes out so much. I'm worried that maybe he doesn't help me as much as he helps the Reds. Um, and so I've got him in tier 5. I got Hassan Kim here in tier 5. And I got to do it. I got Willie Adames in tier 5 too.
Ooh,
Surely he can't be as bad as he was last year.
Okay.
He does hit home runs. That's what Willie Adames gives you more than anything else. And he plays a lot too. I put Willie there. That's a homer pick. You don't have to put him in your tier 5. I know it's a homer pick, but I love Willie Adames, man. And he made this maybe his last year in Milwaukee. So let's live it up.
He made it so I was incorrect last year because you remember I predicted that he would be the leading shortstop coming out of the second half, and of course he was not.
Yeah, that was All-Star break. You bold prediction, and sadly, you were not correct on
I was not.
Do you have a tier
This goes
5?
back to what I'm saying because Ellie De La Cruz on Fantasy Pros is ranked at 35th overall. That's
too high.
Way too high.
Yeah.
But on ESPN, he's 146.
Yeah.
There's value at 146.
Agreed.
So there you have it.
Yeah. Do you have a tier 5 or did you already give your tier 5?
I do. And in this tier, I've got Xander Bogaerts, which we just talked about. I got J.P. Crawford in this tier. And then I got C.J. Abrams in this tier, even though I kind of was hesitant to put him here, just simply based on the team he's on.
So I'm with you. I almost put C.J. Abrams in my tier 5 also. I chose not to. I think he's just below those guys. I think he's a guy where if you need to me, he's a waiver wire guy, not a draftable guy. Someone, if you wait on shortstop and you don't get one, then CJ Abrams is fine for you. But we'll talk about our value picks here in a minute. And I like all of my value picks better than I like CJ Abrams. I just couldn't put him in my tier 5.
Okay. So I got these guys. J.P. Crawford is a guy that a lot of people, and here's the difference that goes the other way. Because ESPN has him ranked at 139th overall. Fantasy Pros, 240th.
I line up with Fantasy Pros better with J.P. Crawford.
Okay, so 240th. If that's where you're coming from, then there's all kinds of value here at 240.
Yeah.
So, but 19 homers.
Yep.
So I have him here, and in my value tier, you might be a little surprised at this because in my value tier, I've got Jackson Holiday.
Yeah.
Leading off my value tier, as I suspect that he's going to be their leading second base candidate. And if that happens, then he's going to have shortstop and second base qualifications. He's going to be batting in that Baltimore lineup. They're a good team. I like this a lot. And he's not even ranked on ESPN. Not even ranked, which is wild to me. So, we were talking earlier about players that you could target, but this is not going to work, I don't think, because by the time this draft comes around, that's not going to be the case anymore. He is going to be up there higher than the last round. So, I really like him. I think he's
Yeah,
going to be their leading second baseman.
agreed.
So Jackson, I talked about him. My first article of the year, was it the second? I can't remember, but I said that he was the top prospect in all baseball. I still believe that, and so I like him a lot. He's a value. However you want to chop this up, and then below, I've got Tommy Edman of the St. Louis Cardinals, a
Interesting.
player that can play every single place, and he's at 185th overall on ESPN. So there's value to be had here on a player that plays every day, and plays different positions. So especially on ours, because we've got, we got the first, second, third, shortstop, then we got the middle infield and corner infield and outfield. You need players that can play more than one position, and he certainly does that. So I've got him in my value here.
Yeah, those are good ones, I think, overall. Now, I will say this about Jackson Holiday. And when we did second base, I had him ranked in my tier 2. I had him above Marte, Horner, Arias, Bogarts, McLean, all those guys. I did not put him in my rankings here at shortstop because I just didn't know where to put him. I'm high on him. I'm in 3 leagues already, probably a 4th. And if I'm in 4 leagues and I don't have him in 2 leagues, then I've failed in drafting, in my opinion.
Okay.
I want Jackson Holiday on some of my teams, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know how early you have to take him. I don't know
Yeah,
yet.
I don't know either, because he's 196th in
Yeah, he's
fantasy
gonna go
vote.
higher than that.
He's gonna, but like I said, he's not even ranked on ESPN.
Yeah,
That that
yeah.
that can't be the case when draft day comes around. I'll be shocked.
What's the highest you think Jackson Holiday goes?
If he's a
Think through
starting
all the
second
leagues that
baseman
you've
for the
been in.
Baltimore Orioles, I'm taking him before we hit the probably 18th round.
Oh no, he's gone way before that.
You think so?
There is a league where someone is taking him round 6 or 7.
Well, if you take
Guaranteed.
him at 6 or 7, you can have him. That's all
Guaranteed.
I'll say about that.
Guaranteed. If they officially announce him as opening day roster, I mean he's going 10th round or earlier every single draft.
Okay.
He is the most popular prospect that has come
Absolutely.
out in quite some time.
Right.
And yeah, he's going to go early. I would guess in our league. I'm not taking him at this point. I would guess in our league he goes before the 10th round.
Okay. And that's exactly the reason why I did not include him on our last round, even
Yeah.
though he's not ranked, because I know that's not going to be the case on draft day. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I did
That's
not
a
do
hard one.
that.
Okay. Fantasy value picks. Here's some names for you.
Okay.
Carlos Correa got hurt last year.
Okay.
In and out, had issues with his contract, all that kind of stuff. His ADP right now, according to ESPN, is 218. If you get Carlos Correa in the 200s as
Okay.
your second shortstop, you're doing just fine. I think. I like that. I like that value for him if you can get him in the 200s.
Okay. So I have him in my caution tier.
Okay.
So I'm not
Well,
saying don't draft him.
let's come back to him. Then we'll come back to him
Okay.
when we get to the caution tiers.
Okay.
Anthony Volpe. All right. Now hear
Okay.
me out on this. New
Okay.
York Yankees shortstop. Here's the
Right.
negative on Anthony Volpe. He batted 209 last year with 167 strikeouts.
Yeah.
Now you say, how in the world can a guy who bats 209 with 167 strikeouts be someone that you're interested in? And I turn your attention to Kyle Schwarber. Now he's not Kyle Schwarber. All right.
No.
So I say that jokingly, but here's the positives with Anthony Volpe: 21 home runs, 24 stolen bases. You're going to see some guys, we'll talk about them in a moment, these guys that I don't like, where they've got decent home run numbers, but their stolen bases are single digits. Volpe is in a better lineup this year than he was last year. He is another year older, another year experienced. I think that batting average goes up. I think you see him in the 230s. And I think those strikeouts come down to a degree. They probably don't get drastically better, But if he can get him down to the 140 range, I'd be a lot more comfortable, especially with his value, where he's sitting at. I mean, he's basically undrafted down in those late 240s, 250s, somewhere in that range right now. And so that's another guy, second shortstop or early waiver wire pickup kind of a guy. I like Anthony Volpe, the value that you can get from him right now for sure. He is at 228. I'm sorry, 228 is his ADP right now. Then the last guy I've got is a guy that I cannot believe is as low as he is. And he's O'Neal Cruz. His ADP is 204. I know he plays for the Pirates, but he played for the Pirates before he was hurt too. He's a shortstop with value. And if I miss out on the top two tiers of the guys that I want, I'll pass on the Bogarts. I'll pass on probably even the Ellie De La Cruzes to wait for a Correa and O'Neal Cruz because I just think the value is so much better down there in the 200s.
Okay. That goes right back to what I was saying before. Because O'Neal Cruz on Fantasy Pros is at 68th overall.
Holy smokes.
That's not happening.
No.
And as you just mentioned, 204th. That's that can make it so that you don't have to go throw up right after you make the pick. All right. So, but O'Neal Cruz, he's a guy who, you got to be cautious of. You got to make sure he's wholly healthy, and it looks like he is.
Let me ask you this. If you come down to Ellie De La Cruz or O'Neal Cruz, you have to think about this for a second because Ellie De La Cruz is the sexier name. But that being said, I look at Ellie De La Cruz with all those. I mean, what'd you say, 33% strikeout rate for Ellie De La Cruz?
Way up there.
Yeah. Now in 2022, that's where O'Neal Cruz was. In the same spot. All right. So you're going off a guy who got hurt last year, didn't play, but what, 9 games last year.
No, 9 games. So there's really nothing you could get out of that. 2022 played in 87 games, hit 17 homers, 54 RBI.
And 10 stolen bases. Him and Ellie De La Cruz to me are so similar. Like you're picking between one of them versus I mean, to me, their value is identical. The difference is that you can get O'Neal Cruz 60 picks later, right? Then you can get Ellie De La Cruz.
I agree with that 100%. Even though I still got him in caution, but if he's looking good in the spring, I'm okay with that. And Volpe, I've got him in my caution tier because, as you mentioned, 209.
Yeah.
That's hard to get over.
It is.
And
what let me pull it up real quick. I gotta pull this up because the reason I say this is I was just looking at my keepers in my keeper league today, and this is why I brought up Schwarber. So let's look at Schwarber real quick. 2023, Kyle Schwarber. He mashed 47 home runs. He batted 197. The value for Volpe compared to Schwarber, and listen, Schwarber's a better fantasy player than Volpe. Schwarber's draftable. Volpe is late round, stuff. But if you're going to survive bad batting average, you've got to have other stats. And Volpe doesn't give you 50 home runs, but he gives you mid-20s plus mid-20 stolen bases. He gives you something that's going to get you some points.
Right. And so, you got to keep your eyes on during spring, see how because, he was only a rookie.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
And so, and sometimes if rookies come in and they blow the doors off the place in the second year, then collapse.
Yeah.
But guys that aren't so great in the first year, then come in the second year, and the next thing you know, they're Mike Trout.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
all right,
it could happen. Right. I'm not saying that it will, but the fact he plays for New York, you got to like that lineup,
right?
But just see how he's doing. If he's still striking out in spring training, then all bets are off on that. Yeah. And so,
all right, who do we hate? Who are we going to hate on today? Who are we saying this is a guy that's just, I'm not sure I can draft this guy.
So You may find this difficult to believe, but the guy that I have at the top of my do not draft list is, in fact, Willie Adames.
That
I'm
doesn't
not doing
surprise
that.
me.
I've had him. I've had him in the past.
Yeah.
I know he's on your Brewers,
Yeah.
but he burned me last year, and so I'm
I'm
not going to
banking
do
on
that.
I'm banking on sour on everybody. I'd love to get Willie Adames late. That'd be awesome. I'd love that.
Okay, if that happens,
But I'm banking on that.
that's all well and good for you. And I also have Carlos Correa in this. I'm not
Really?
drafting him tier
Okay.
because all the problems that he had, and he still has. They don't know what for sure if he's healthy or not, and I'm not going to take a chance on that. Is let's see here, in the 19th round, even so. But now he's almost. It was getting there. Almost 30 years old,
Yeah,
and so. But you just can't know that you're going to get a full season out of him. So
that's true.
I'm not doing that. So he's on my no draft list.
Okay. All right. I've got two guys.
Okay.
They're both in your tiers.
Okay.
So here they are. JP Crawford.
Okay.
JP Crawford, 19 home runs, 2 stolen bases,
Yeah.
125 strikeouts. I can get
That's
Thairo
baseball
Estrada from
nowadays.
San Francisco. I can get Luis Rengifo from the Angels. I can get
almost put
Paul
him on my.
DeJong with the Chicago White Sox this year, all with similar numbers to JP Crawford. And I can get them, almost all of them, as free agent pickups if I want them. I think JP Crawford is so overrated. I do not want JP Crawford on my team. I will not have JP Crawford on my team. And I will chuckle the moment someone drafts JP Crawford and think, haha, well, that person does not know what they're in for. So there's my JP Crawford hate
Okay.
for today. Give me Estrada. I take Thairo Estrada from San Francisco 20 times over JP Crawford. If JP
Okay.
Crawford gave me double-digit stolen bases, I would be in. But 2 stolen bases from a shortstop, I can't have that. I can't have that.
No, but I think that he'll be pretty decent hitting lineup up there in Seattle. So that's one of the things that I like there, and so that's why I have him in my tier. And he plays games, and
This is a kid who was a prospect when he came up in Philadelphia that everybody thought he was going to be it, and he just was not it. And he's played better in Seattle than he did in Philly. I'll give him that. So I think he's fine for a Major League Baseball club to have on their team. Not for my fantasy team, though. I cannot do 2 stolen bases and 125 strikeouts for my shortstop. I need stolen bases from that.
Unfortunately, that's baseball in 2024.
Yes, but not on my team. No,
Okay.
We say shave your beards, button up, and steal bases. No. The other guy I have is Dansby Swanson. 22 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 154 strikeouts. Swanson to me is a waiver wire pickup guy, not a draftable guy. I think Swanson is what Swanson is. We know who he is. We know what he does. Could you do worse than Swanson? Yes. But with the baseball gods angry at Chicago, I'm telling you, stay away from Dansby Swanson this year. 22 home runs is good. 9 stolen bases is okay. But again, I want more out of my shortstop than that. And you throw in that 154 strikeouts, that's just too many for me. And listen, the reality is I like Dansby Swanson. He's a Vandy kid. I think he's a fine person, fine individual. I like Dansby Swanson. I feel bad that he's going to get struck by lightning in the game 3 of the season, and but all because of Craig Counsell stabbing a community in the back. It's not Swanson's fault, but he's not going to be on my fantasy team, at least as a draft pick. He's a quality waiver wire pickup throughout the season when you need a shortstop in a pinch, but he's just, to me, he's just not a guy I want to draft.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about him being a player you're going to pick up off the waiver wire, because he's going to get drafted.
And
so,
listen, here you go. You're right. Unless you draft them just to prove a point, I will make you a bet, and I don't know what we're betting yet. We'll figure this out. That Dansby Swanson at some point is going to be available on the waiver wire. and this gets null and void if I draft him or you draft him, because that doesn't count. That'd be cheating. He will be on the waiver wire at some point this season.
Okay. I'll go on there and say no, he will not, unless, of course, he's injured, and then all bets are off.
No, that doesn't count either. Yeah. Injury doesn't count
at all. If he's not hurt, he was going to be on a roster all season.
All right. So we'll figure out a way to something we got to bet. We got to figure that out. If you're listening, you're watching, comment. What's a good thing that we can do on this, because that's the way it is. All right, listen, we're already 5 minutes past the hour, so let's wrap up this show. Let's first start bellyupfantasysports.com. Again, they sponsor our last segment here, the Fantasy Focus, our rankings each week. Next week, we're doing outfielders there. I assume you have an article dropping this week on shortstops, Kevin?
You can assume that correctly. There's an article already out there as far as their baseman that we talked about. And there was a little snafu with the Belly Up fantasy website. So if you saw my article, because it got dropped accidentally onto the site and it wasn't ready yet. So if you read it and you're like, what is this dude talking about? It wasn't ready. So
go back and check it again.
It'll be smoothed out this week. So don't hold that against me if you've seen it. And so you could look forward to that dropping. And so you can always ask me a question or whatever on X at Kevin62 WILSCA, and Reddit. I appreciate you guys. As I mentioned, I get a lot of commentary from Reddit readers, so I appreciate that. And so that's where I get most of my my views from. So appreciate you guys, and so ask away.
All right. SeatGeek.com. If you're going to go to a game, you need to get tickets. You need to get them through SeatGeek.com. Use the code BellyUpSports. If you get hungry, which everybody does, RighteousFelon.com, great beef jerky. Use code STOVE15 at checkout. I got a full week of shows tomorrow night. Monday night, 8 o'clock. I'll be doing my local hour, talking EKU sports. We've got EKU pitcher Riker Walton joining us, as well as, I believe, EKU women's basketball coach Greg Todd. And the goal is guard Tayshawn Comer from the guys team as they start ASUN tournament play this week. So we'll talk about those things. And then Wednesday night, Dad joins me. We are previewing the central divisions for Major League Baseball. So NL and AL central divisions. We'll be talking about that, as well as other sports news, and covering NASCAR, recapping today's Vegas race, and previewing next week's Phoenix race as well. We'll have a guest on to help us do all of those things. You can follow me on social media at SportsStove on Twitter and Instagram. All right, Kev, I think that's it for tonight.
That's it.
So we'll be back next Sunday night covering outfielders. 2 weeks from now, we'll be doing a live draft. And so you can kind of tune in and get some commentary from us, as well as the other people in our league. As we're drafting, we'll bring on people to talk through their strategies and different things they're doing. That'll be in 2 weeks from today as well. Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.